So we have Christoph Ludewig from, he's the VP of OEM Europe at Geotab. Geotab is a member organization and also on the board of directors. And Christoph has been kind enough to join us for this this little discussion here. We also have Lowry Snow, who's a principal in IoT and connected vehicles at AWS. And so he will join the panel. And finally, Emil Jaktovic. He is in charge of business development for a startup, Remotive Labs. And so we wanted to give sort of a full ecosystem view from a OEM all the way to a startup and everything sort of in between with the fleet ops. So gentlemen, I give you the floor. Thank you.
Please, welcome. Anywhere, Christoph. Musical chairs here. Okay, thanks everyone for joining me. So yeah, quick one then. I will start with you, Christoph, because you're next to me and it's easy, and you have the microphone. So yeah, like why do fleets use telematics? Can you tell us more sort of detail then about how Geotab is actually helping to handle this whole? You guys are kind of pros here already.
All right, yeah, thanks, we'll do so. And allow me to quickly introduce what Geotab is doing, because this will then lead to answering your question. So Geotab is a fleet telematics company. Our customers are the fleets, like leasing companies, like rental companies, like any company that operates a number of vehicles. And these customers, they need data of their vehicles to manage their fleet, to optimize the fleet, and to really keep it running on the street, keep it earning money for them, and so on. So Geotab is a Canadian company. About 3.5 million vehicles are being connected to the system for about 44,000 customers. Major footprint in North America, but also a market leader in Europe in this space. And the way Geotab gets and gathers the data from the vehicle is by installing a dongle, an OBD device. And we have seen that on the slides before, which you presented. This is one method to get the data. To be honest, that's not the preferred way we want to do it. But there, until now, was no alternative but to install a retrofitment device in a vehicle to get the data. Now, as we've seen in the presentations and as we see in the industry, things are moving. So the vehicles are connected more and more. They generate data. The OEMs capture the data in their systems, in their clouds, and that's how the business model of Geotab will change, because we, in future, and increasingly already today, we don't need to install hardware in the vehicle anymore, which is good for everyone. Just it costs money and takes time. So the second stream we have to capture the data is connecting to the OEM clouds. And this is becoming more and more important and will eventually change the business model of Geotab in the future. Now, what are customers doing? And I think it's good to start with the customer and with the use case in this discussion, because that's always the starting point before going into technology discussions. So the fleet customers need telematics and need data for basically three major use cases. There are many more, but the major ones. And you can remember this by SOS. S stands for, the first S stands for the safety. Safety of the driver. Helping the driver to drive cautiously, avoid accidents. If there is an accident, to be sure that you can help immediately, that you can repair the vehicle, that you can manage how this vehicle is then being brought back to the road. But first point is really to make sure that the driver is driving defensively and cautiously and avoids accidents. The O in SOS is for operations. So operating your fleet, having an eye on the cost of the fleet, having an eye on maintenance, on uptime and services to manage this proactively. And the second S is for sustainability, becoming more and more important. Fuel reduction, transitioning to EVs, trying to find out which vehicles can I exchange for an EV. How do I operate an EV? How do I make sure that the vehicles are always charged? Because that's crucial when you operate a commercial fleet. You need to have the vehicles on the road. So these are the main 3 use cases which we provide the data for and the systems so that the customers can really manage their fleets.
Great, thanks, Christoph. To the point on data, I think maybe that's a nice segue to yourself, Lowry, as the hyperscaler. Maybe you can talk us through a little bit more about services like AWS FleetWise and in regards to this data, how VSS has also played an important role.
Sure, I would be happy to. Thank you. Just to start real fast so that you're aware of the company, AWS, or Amazon Web Services. We're a small infrastructure provider of cloud compute and related management services with many customers that are managing their computer workloads in the cloud. And we do understand the importance of data, especially related to vehicles. Today we have, I would say, hundreds of millions of devices that connect daily into our IoT services. Many millions of vehicles also connecting into AWS and leveraging the AWS services for those connections. And as we work with the various OEMs, Tier 1s, and others in the industry, we have much discussion about the importance of how we can help them manage and collect that data. So when we ended up developing the tool that you mentioned, or the service, AWS IoT FleetWise, one of the decisions we had to make as we looked at how we help companies collect data from their vehicles is what the data format should be. And there were many options out there. There was also the ability for us to create yet another data format. But we saw the advantage of building with VSS as a way to improve the format that we used within our own tool, but then also the OEMs and others that model their vehicles in the cloud can use that same VSS standard, making it easy for them to build applications on top of, and then also share that with the wider ecosystem.
Great, super. And then to yourself, Emil, maybe you can give us a little overview as well on Remotive Labs. And my question for you then is, following this topic of the data, if we come a little bit further into the vehicle from the cloud, in terms of what you do at Remotive Labs with your rapid development tools, and again, VSS and a VSS data broker. Maybe you can share some insights there, how that could fit into all of this in terms of fleet ops.
Sure. So thanks for first, nice being here. So we're almost as famous as AWS, but for you, if there should be somebody here that doesn't know who Remotive Labs is, so we're a Swedish startup based out of Malmö, southern parts. So and what we're doing, we're having a platform that you can see it as a software ECU. It extracts all data from the vehicle buses. And then that you can look at it live or share it with partners and others via cloud as well. So, and we believe here, if you were looking at it from a VSS context, why are we joining this and why is this of importance? So I've been in the startup world for quite a few years in different roles. So some of you might recognize me because I've been at these conferences for 15 years now. And as being a startup guy, collaboration is key for us to being able to get our solutions out there, working with many, but also from that perspective that we want to make life easier for third-party app developers. So if it's a push maybe to the OEMs, if you want to make life easier to third-party developers and making them to do stuff for your vehicles, you need to make it easy for them, else it will be tricky to attract those guys, and you want to have the best vehicles going forward. So,
do we have a little OEM response or remark or a disclaimer up front?
No, not at all. No need for a disclaimer here, but it's, yeah, we need companies like Remotive Labs, making the data available, right? And then we look at Geotab, and we have a collaboration as well, and even business cases that are positive, we don't have the bandwidth in Volvo to do, right? So we can't do everything on our own, and we need the partnerships like Geotab to say that, okay, this business, as a partnership, we monetize on together, right? So, but...
Great. And then to yourself, if we're on Geotab, Christoph, So how do you think, or how do you see that standards could help or shape some of this fleet ops space?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, if we have a broader view and look at the industry, you have multiple OEMs with multiple models, makes, and years in their vehicle lineup. And as we have seen before, it's not only about cars or trucks, it's buses, it's everything basically. Now this multitude of vehicles, multitude of OEMs, then you have a multitude of telematics service providers like Geotab and others, and you have a multitude of customers. So these are hundreds and thousands of integrations that need to be done. And this is work and time and effort that is not generating value. Generating value is to develop the products for the customers that help the customers. So standards here can really ease the life of everyone. If you have one common set which you can rely on, which everybody uses, you don't have to spend time and money and energy on multiple integrations with all different OEMs and all different customers and all different systems, but just one. But on the other side, also the standard has to make sure that everything is being considered and captured. Now that's what we currently see as well. Different OEMs provide a different set of data in a different format, in a different frequency, and this often does not harmonize across the fleet. So imagine a fleet customer with several brands in his fleets. He wants to have the same data across all the vehicles, and that's what we really have to make sure. And this standardization is not only on the number and frequency of data points, it's also on the underlying technology that's being used, like the APIs, and VSS is a great standard for that. But it can also be on how the data is being pre-processed in the vehicle already. And the standard can also be on the processes how to activate a vehicle to send data or to deactivate a vehicle to stop sending data. There needs to be a standard on how to capture the consent from the customer. And maybe even going so far to think about having a standard pricing model, not the same prices, but at least the same model around this. So this goes far beyond just a data standard, which we have to consider. And I would love in the fleet ops bird of a feather that we can discuss these things as well around the whole business model.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the start, and I think I would like to stay on that thread, if we will, in terms of all this complexity and integration efforts and interoperability. To you, Lowry, how do you think that the cloud we could leverage the cloud? We could benefit here from the immense capabilities there.
Yeah, let me maybe answer that as a response to some of the things that Christoph just mentioned. This is a shameless plug for this session tomorrow with Geotab and myself. But as we've been chatting with our partner Geotab about how we can help our mutual customers make their data more easily available to Geotab. As you know, Geotab consumes a lot of data from various OEMs, and as he just mentioned, their preference is that there is not a dongle or an aftermarket device installed in the vehicle, that the OEMs collect this from their automotive systems and then send this over. Right now, they have the ability to send unstructured data, which requires a lot of engineering work, and Geotab can talk about this in detail tomorrow. We're proposing, and hopefully we can do this as part of the commercial BOF as well, how to send structured data, or how to help the OEMs use VSS to send structured data, not only to partners like Geotab, but also to their own applications inside the cloud, applications outside of the cloud, to others in the industry, insurance companies and others that would want to consume data. Being able to easily structure their data in VSS makes it much easier for these downstream consumers of the data. We like to talk about undifferentiated heavy lift. We certainly encourage all companies to take advantage of the services that allow you to remove that undifferentiated heavy lift to focus on the applications and innovations that are of interest to your customers.
That's a very good point, and maybe let me quickly add on this, and sorry. So I want to give you an example why now is the right time to do this and then discuss these kind of things. Steve, in his intro this morning, mentioned the EV bus segment and the FMS standard that's being developed by the truck manufacturers and now being extended to buses as well. This is a great initiative. The downside is this is an initiative driven by the OEMs. So here all the OEMs try to align on something which we all know can take some time. In the bus market, what we see currently, especially for EVs, is that customers take the initiative. So there are large bus fleets in Europe in the public transportation segment that have defined their own standard now. You can Google this, it's called VDV 238. So they're saying whenever we buy buses, the buses must comply to this data standard. This is not cloud-based, it is in the vehicle. So how can we, as a public transport company, capture the data in the vehicle? They define the format, they define all the data points they need, and they make this mandatory to the OEMs. Now, the bus market is very specific because you have a few large customers that have a huge market power. That's not the case in truck and in passenger car segment in this way. But this is a good example where now customers take the initiative and dictate the OEM what they want. Now, for all of us, and we don't know if that what they have defined is the best thing around. Now, if we take too long and wait too long altogether, then the same might happen in the truck and the passenger car business as well. And then we don't have a choice. Then customers are dictating. Now, the sooner we take the initiative and the sooner we come up with a standard, the better it will be for the whole industry.
Great, thanks, Christopher. So over to you, Emil. Maybe you can tell me a little bit more about this democratize automotive slogan. I think we're sort of heading there. We're talking about open source, and we hear that this push and this change and transition now towards customers driving because of a lack of any feasible, usable standard that was out there. Maybe you can follow on that.
Sure. So that's a slogan that we have, democratize automotive, and the background for it is democracy is about power to the people, and in this case, it's about power to the software developers in automotive. And the companies actually sprung from the headaches that one engineer had developing applications and actually trying stuff out in automotive. So, and we believe, so if you want to develop a good software application for a vehicle, it's about iteration. You want to start testing early, doing continuous integrations as well, and also inviting others to do stuff. And here is where VSS comes in as well, making it easy, but with the advantage there that you can, if you have OEM specifics that you want to hide, okay, you filter that out, and then you're sharing the rest of the data to the third-party developers.
And that can and should be done as early as possible, right? Which is another important piece.
Definitely. So it's not like the traditional V model you have for hardware development in automotive. It's not really the best case for software development. There is more like, let's start early. If you want to get app developer on board early, okay, let's start with a mule, for example. Volvo could have a truck driving around, recording data, enabling parts of that data to a developer like Geotab. When the next generation of vehicle is out or starting to get out, okay, you do an update, but they are come along on the road to actually doing the development and not doing it at the end of the project when everything hardware is set. So you need to start much earlier.
Yep, I totally agree. Anything from your side on that,
No,
Magnus?
I totally agree, right? And it's if we have a VSS standard, then you can start your service development as when I do my trucks, instead of where we actually have been before. That I have to build my trucks, and we have to then look at, okay, what data did I get, and how do I monetize from it? And actually, not only looking outwards from the truck, but looking inwards from it. You also have then, in a very distributed company like Volvo at least, very ingenious engineers selling services on the data that they can find in the truck. But the data in the truck is changing. And without a standard like VSS, my signals and my services, the engineers doing it might not know that there's a service sold utilizing it. So it's a troublesome situation, and I think VSS will be the nice API that can help us on both ends.
Christoph, I wanted to just pick up on that from Magnus, and if we're going back to it's even the case now where customers are starting to dictate that APIs or the data that they need and require. So this whole paradigm shift, I think, is something exciting that we can explore in this BOF.
And definitely, and the really good thing is that we are all sitting in one boat. So the customer is a truck customer. It's also a telematics customer. It's also maybe a cloud customer. So we all have the same objective and the same goal here to make the customer happy, which is great. And as I've mentioned, Geotab has quite some experience, and we process, I think it's by now 55 billion data points a day. We are often being asked by OEMs, hey, if we want to develop our service, our data set, our standards in a way that Geotab customers can use it, how should we do this? And we are really eager and happy to help, and currently we are in the process of drafting this kind of fleet telematics best practices recommendation, which we can provide to the OEMs who maybe have not 20 years of experience in the data business so far. And that's what we are crafting there, this best practice recommendation. I would happily bring into the birds of a feather discussion as well as some input to get started. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, how much quicker and better that could evolve, right, in the open space. So to you, Lowry, now, a question on Fleetwise and VSS. Maybe I'm curious as well to learn or find out more about learnings where maybe it's falling short, or things that you've discovered, since rolling out this service. And I guess a lot of that goes to your partnership as well, what you found together.
Yeah, I can respond real fast. Just want to add to what Christoph said a minute ago. We completely agree that if we don't quickly position a set of standards that would be of use to our industry, maybe our preference, then somebody else will create those standards that we will then be forced to adopt. And oftentimes those might not be ideal for the tech companies that then have to integrate and work with those standards. So let's hope that those leading the commercial BOF can figure this out real fast. So to respond to the Fleetwise question, it's been interesting as a cloud company to slowly start to provide more services that run inside the cloud and also outside of the cloud. And operating inside the vehicle is a natural extension for us because there are so many companies that want to leverage cloud infrastructure in relationship to their connected vehicle platforms. As we launched Fleetwise, I think there have been some very interesting conversations where in order to use Fleetwise, you have to also adopt VSS. And that requires a different way of thinking where we aren't giving you the ability to just send logs. We're not just a data logger and send your logs into the cloud and then we help you work with those. We take a different approach where you really have to be a little bit more methodical as you model your vehicle data inside your cloud environment. What that allows for then is that Fleetwise can be that data abstraction layer, but then think about how easy it is to build applications on top of a model that can change underneath across the model or the various vehicle models that you're collecting data from, without worrying about how that gets collected and dropped into your VSS data structures. So that has been a shift for various companies that we're working with, but I think they're starting to see the elegance of architecting their solutions that way.
Thanks. I'm going to go to you next because you have the mic, Emil. I'm curious to learn more as well from a startup perspective. Really, how much speed you could gain from going down the VSS track and working on a broker that makes this data very accessible. Please tell us more.
Yeah, no. So it's maybe I'm repeating myself and feeling like a parrot, but it's all like make life easier for software developers. Start early, build up mules. You can build up software ECUs where you use a Raspberry Pi, whatever you have, to run your application there. Try it out. When you continue, you build up your SIL rigs, hill rigs, same continues. Sharing the data. If you're using VSS throughout the whole process, it will be easier for all your third-party developers that you can invite when you feel ready for it. And then continuously as well, when you get into the pre-production, when you actually have the vehicle ready, continue throughout the same process and making life easier for developers. So we'll share, for those of you of interest, at 1:45 today, we have a session with Volvo Cars, not AB, about how we're working together with them and to make stuff happen. And
feeding data into Android Automotive, right? So I guess to the panel, unless there's any other sort of avenues we would like to explore, as I say, this is the start. We move this hopefully to a birds of a feather group, and these conversations continue, and we get on with some of this stuff quite quickly, because otherwise others will. And we want to do these things fast. So I thank you all for coming. Yeah, let's have questions from the audience.
Are there maybe any app developers for that wants to do stuff for fleet and feels locked in because you don't have any data?
Next time. We need to do a bit more work then.
The complexity of the legacy data that they have in their systems, in their cars, in their vehicles, of different brands, even with a single OEM. And the first thing they say is, how do we get over that hurdle to get into something that's usable, like a VSS orientation? And you know, my answer has always been, well, it's got to be something about tooling. But it's not just about tooling, because that's just writing more stuff, right? Is there AI? Is there machine learning? Is there anything that we can put into that translation layer to simplify the adoption and the transition from you know, all these, you know, different types of and structures into something that's usable in the cloud and so forth? So I don't know who can answer that question, but
I don't think it's like rocket science. It's more like doing the work and the translation between the legacy and the VSS standard. So either if like it's about changing name of it for making it easier for the developers, if it's like changing the units of stuff from meter per second to miles per hour, or if it's like combining a couple of signals that becomes a VSS signal. So that's what a broker does and makes it easy for clients. So I would say it's more like, okay, for OEM's perspective, maybe I'm making it easier for myself, but it's just, okay, let's take the step. What we're showing upwards towards the app development community should be VSS. We can still keep our legacy stuff inside the cars, because it will still be there, because the car exists and will continue to in an evolutionary way, and not being a revolutionary with a completely new platform.
Yeah, I can speak briefly from a tier one sort of perspective. This is also the power and the idea and concept of having a data broker, a VS data broker. And there are various that exist today, open source, and there are proprietary commercial solutions. And add to that also, I think yesterday's evening session as well with COVESA and AutoSAR, this is maybe another track which is evolving to connect this legacy closer to where we are trying to get to with this make life as easy as possible for software developers. But Christoph, you had a piece also.
Yeah, and I think we have to think a little bit beyond VSS as it is today, and we heard that yesterday, the initiatives about going from passenger cars to trucks and buses, extending it in this way, and or I think this morning, I don't know, also including remote functions in the standard. So I think the OEMs, they come up with a lot of ideas, a lot of products. They want to offer a lot of data points, and some of those are beyond VSS. So the OEMs don't want to shrink their offering in this case, but we should then expand VSS a little bit. And I really think about this remote functions like preheating the car or the conditioning of the battery or opening and then closing the doors. I think this is very important to include in VSS or however it is called.
Evolving to services, right? Service APIs.
Okay, well, hearing none, let's give our panelists a round of applause for their very helpful perspectives.
Thanks, guys.
And as they're walking off the stage, I will give a couple of announcements. Thank you, gentlemen. No, you're fine. You're fine. Let's
Might
leave
need to
that.
click up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give yeah, we don't need that. I just want to give you a couple of housekeeping items, and then I'm going to introduce a very important person here to come up and join me here for just a couple of minutes. By the way, in case you're wondering, the answer to what do I do next based on this previous thing is to go to the BOF tomorrow, the Birds of a Feather session tomorrow, which I believe is at 11 a.m. Join in. I mean, maybe it's because I live this 24/7, but I just sensed a sense of urgency from these people that now is the time to act on in this space. And so if you have any interest in fleet ops or in commercial vehicles or in fleet management and that sort of thing, please make it your effort to go tomorrow. And some of you here are like, yeah, I'm in the vehicle side, but I'm not in, we have a commercial vehicle department in our company. Please take this information back to them and engage them in this dialogue as urgently as you possibly can. Just as a reminder, I mentioned this earlier and also yesterday, but the business track, as it's been sort of formulated through the program, is transitioning from this room to a room downstairs. It's the AR1 and AR2. Florian Baumann from Aptiv will be presenting immediately after lunch in the AR1, AR2 room combined. And so this sort of track will continue downstairs. It's in the -1 level if you haven't been down there. And it's going to be a little bit more of an intimate room as opposed to this, hey, how's the weather on the other side of this big room? So anyway, we'll be a little bit more, have a little bit more of an opportunity for dialogue. And so, just for so you know where to go, the lunch that we're about ready to open up is in the hotel restaurant, which if you had breakfast here this morning, it's the same general area as that. That's where the lunch will be, and so we'll go from there. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Johannes Biermann. He's the president and COO of ICUS. And more importantly, he's our lunch sponsor today, so you can thank him for the lunch that you're about to partake in. So Johannes, please come up and say a couple of words.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it. So I know I lived like you, probably many of you, in California, and I would say Porto is the next California. So I told my wife, come here. It's spectacular, so I love the venue. I also love the outdoors yesterday with COVESA, really impressive to be on the terrace. And then basically, why are we here as ICUS at COVESA? Very simple, because a lot of the messaging, the urgency, actually, I think there's urgency really, and the excitement also is just palatable because, the software-defined challenge for us that boils down into, we call it platformization. How do we abstract applications so they run over a multitude of vehicle platforms? We do that by the millions, by the way, so about 30 million counting. And then the other side, they could say it's an efficiency challenge. The other side is the data side. It's really, really, really exciting talking to the OEMs, the first tiers, the entire ecosystem about the opportunities in carving out data. And it has various vectors because there's so many different use cases. So we as a company, ICUS, are basically a middleware company, like many of you too, a software company. We're small and nimble. We kept it that way for about 20 years. Working in different areas, not just automotive, but also industrial, where there's a lot to learn from in terms of standards. And we enjoy the challenge. Now, you will enjoy the challenge as you go to lunch, because very happy that you also get a little tool, and I like to call it a platform-independent tool. It's basically a piece of metal. You could call it hardware, but it's totally decoupled from you being a first tier, an OEM, or anything else. You can utilize it, and you can utilize it actually to get access to data, which is the one other thing that we're doing. Whether you open up a bottle of beer tonight, or sometimes even the wine bottles need some opening, or you want to access the vehicle hood, there's a screwdriver in there. Use it. It is actually security certified, so you will be able to get through the airport control with ease. We pre-tested it. And I wish you basically a great lunch. And tomorrow and tonight, you will be able to see a data use case together with, and we're very proud of that, with an active OEM downstairs in the room. So please join us at the booth for an ICAS Edge Suite showcase of our Edge Data Gateway, showing real-life data from a vehicle in basically as natural a context as you can imagine. So thanks very much. Look forward to the collaboration, and thank you to COVESA.
With that, we'll let everybody go to lunch, and thank you for the time, and we'll see you downstairs after lunch.